this is the last class of the meditation. So we'll wrap it up this evening, and then next Wednesday in this slot we start our the Way of the Mystics, and so we'll take a mystic a week, and Baron is the first one, and she has got Brother Lawrence, and then I don't know. I think her friend Kathy is going to take Catherine of Siena, and then Nina is going to take Julian of Norwich. I'm going to take Thomas Merton, and Doug is going to take somebody. He's in Albuquerque right now with Richard Rohr's school, finishing up. What's that?
And you can include John of the Cross too.
Oh, there's John of the Cross, and there's Meister Eckhart. There's so many, and those are just more of the medieval ones. You can go all the way back, and pick up the Desert Fathers and John Cassian. There's a bunch of them. So they'll all be within the Christian tradition, and we'll be looking at especially what caused them to take this turn into a contemplative lifestyle. What was their life circumstances, and what was it that caused them to make this move? And then what was their specific mode or their way of approaching a contemplative lifestyle, and how does that apply to us? And everyone has their idiosyncrasies. Another fascinating one would be, of course, Francis of Assisi. He'd be great. So, we're not going to do this forever, but we just wanted to take a few representative ones, and then kind of go through that sort of drill, because now we've looked at how we can establish our own spiritual program, our contemplative program, and specifically looked at ways of meditation and mindfulness and centering prayer. Now let's look and see how historically, some of the classic contemplatives have operated in their lives. So it should be a lot of fun. We'll see. So tonight what we want to do is finish up. So we're on page 2 of the meditation workshop outline. And we took a look at, we're right in the middle of number 7. So we looked at mindfulness, we read through what it is and what it is not, and that was from the Dialectical Behavior Therapy Workbook. And some of the handouts there are dealing with material from here, which we'll get into tonight. And the PDF that I sent out in the message on the closed group, there's a link to this book if you're interested, if you really want to get into it. And there are instructions to all the exercises, some of which I didn't reprint here because they just went on too long. So at least we'll get to do a little bit of an overview and see what the kind of exercises are that they would be prescribing. And interestingly, from a very clinical point of view, because DBT was developed for borderline personality disorder and bipolar and really difficult, intractable mental illnesses, where regular CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, didn't really work. And so it'll be interesting, but you're going to see it's all the same stuff. That's what's so cool. But specific exercises that may have some traction with you specifically if you're having trouble, especially if you're having trouble getting into a centered or quiet place with the meditation and the centering prayer techniques that we've looked at. There may be some exercises here that can kind of help you work up to that, as I was saying. So that's why it seemed like it was useful for us to do this. So we looked at mindfulness. We talked about Brother Lawrence as a model of mindfulness. He was the one, remember, who was practicing presence throughout his day, no matter where he was. And then we started reading the handouts for the mindfulness exercise, and we got through the first 2. So let's pick that up. If you get your mindfulness exercises page out, we talked about mindful breathing, and we talked about mindful observation. And if you recall, in the mindful observation, we talked about Marion and the praying mantis. Remember? Yeah. Praying mantis story. Okay. So now let's read through mindful awareness. Let's take a look at this. And as we're going through these, be thinking about how you can apply these during your day. And if you can just pick one of these 6 every day and try it and see how it changes things. Hello, William.
The class is full, so you can...
Take that first sheet, if you would.
Oh,
as long as you've got all the rest of them. Okay. And we're looking at the mindfulness exercises sheet there, Billiam. Okay. Mindful awareness. Yeah, if you don't have any of the sheets, just come take one. Yes, I am. Mindful awareness. This exercise is designed to cultivate a heightened awareness and appreciation of simple daily tasks and the results they achieve. Think of something that happens every day more than once. Something you take for granted, like opening a door, for example. At the very moment you touch the doorknob to open the door, stop for a moment and be mindful of where you are, how you feel in that moment, and where the door will lead you. Similarly, the moment you open your computer to start work, take a moment to appreciate the hands that enable this process and the brain that facilitates your understanding of how to use a computer. These touch point cues don't have to be physical ones. For example, each time you think a negative thought, you might choose to take a moment to stop, label the thought as unhelpful, and release the negativity. Or perhaps each time you smell food, you take a moment to stop and appreciate how lucky you are to have good food to eat and share with your family and friends. Choose a touch point that resonates with you today. Instead of going through your daily motions on autopilot, take occasional moments to stop and cultivate purposeful awareness of what you are doing and the blessings it brings to your life. Okay, so mindful awareness, just a simple task. What's a task you do every day that you have done it so many times you don't even think about it anymore?
Brushing my teeth.
Brushing teeth.
Yeah.
What else?
Loading the dishwasher.
Loading the dishwasher. There's a perfect one.
While brushing my teeth.
Multitasking.
Neither of which we can do because the water is shut off in our house.
Wait, have you not showered today?
I have not showered today. What can I say? That's why Marion's not here, by the way. Well, the guys are still there banging away and doing their thing. Okay, so you take that one thing, the example here of opening a door, you know, it's like something that you normally do, but then you stop and you think about it. You're at the computer and you're thinking about the computer. How many of you type by touch on your computer? Yeah? Have you ever thought about what it takes to type by touch? I mean, just stop and think about it. You know, you're sitting there at the keyboard, you know, at least 8 of your fingers are going, maybe 10 if you got the thumbs going on the space bar, and all that muscle coordination, how does that all work through your brain? And I don't know, it's always amazing to me if I just do that, how did that happen? I mean, I'm not thinking about brain, move my finger. You know, it just, yeah, I mean, it just, every movement we do, everything, every word we say, have you ever thought about how amazing it is that we can talk, think about what we're going to say, and pretty much say it in real time? I mean, I'm not really thinking about what I'm saying, I'm just saying it. How amazing is that if you really stop and think about it? Have you stopped and think about how much information we can keep packing in our brains? I mean, good Lord, we could just keep learning, and it's in there someplace. The skills that people have, you know, from left to right, they can do all these different things, from building a house to typing by touch to playing music to writing. I mean, how does that work? If you really stop and think about what's going on, it really is amazing. Just the muscles and the coordination it takes to walk to a door, turn a doorknob, and walk through. Or as they say, you're standing on one side of the door and something completely different is going to present itself on the other side of the door. You're on the threshold between those two worlds. I mean, yeah, you can overthink this, but the point is that we don't really take the time to really just be aware of how amazing some of this stuff is, just because we do it every day. You know, it's that averaging effect that we need in order to be able to live and function. I mean, if you were that amazed all the time, you wouldn't get anything done, right? Just like a child. But to go back into that place every once in a while and reground yourself and become aware again, that's really the key here. So pick something, you know, as you're driving home, you know, just pick something, and when you get home, pick something and just consider it. And while you're doing that, realize that while you are really focused on that one thing and considering it and being amazed by it, whole moments have gone by where you really weren't thinking. You were there, just like moving this finger. It's happening, and I'm aware of it happening, but I'm not thinking about it happening. Like I said, the words aren't forming in my mind. You're focused on the doorknob and the turning and where you're moving, but you're not thinking about it. There was a book that I read that said, you're sitting there and you're aware that you've got 2 feet, but you're not thinking about them until now. Now you're thinking about them because I brought your attention to it. So we can be aware of something without thinking about it, thereby removing us from the moment and the connection with it. That's what we're trying to foster. Awareness of something, but as soon as you start thinking, oh, I'm aware of this, now you've stepped away again. And so think about those little nuances and practice some kind of mindful awareness. Yeah.
Without intending any joke, how can you step away from an awareness that you've suddenly become aware of something that's supposed to not notice you're aware of?
Because, like I said, you can be aware of something without thinking about it. The classic for me is you're sitting there and you're watching the sunset, and it just draws you in like a living picture. You're inside the frame. Frank always talks about the difference between driving a car and riding a motorcycle. In a car, you're watching a picture on the wall in a frame. But when you're a motorcycle, you're inside the picture, There's a difference between the two. And if you're on a bicycle, even more so, because now you feel every single little hill in a way that you don't on a motorized vehicle. So you can be aware of something without thinking about it. And so what we want to do is really consider the thing, but not form the words in our head. And is that distinction making?
I'm just always had a difficult time with all this meditation stuff. I've been trying it for 3 years, and I'm lucky if I get 30 seconds of focused meditation.
Then maybe some of the DBT stuff might be good for you to practice, because that might help you to kind of inch your way up. We'll see if any of those work. And there's so many more in the book that I just picked a few highlights just to give you guys a taste for it. But you can. You are aware of things all the time that you're not thinking about. We're sitting here, we're aware of all the noises in the room, we're aware of the people around us, we're aware of the air temperature. Of course, if you're really hot, then you're thinking about it again. But as soon as you form those words, if it gets 1 degree hotter, I'm out the door. As soon as that is in Sharon's head, then...
She's close to the door, too.
Exactly.
And she's mobile, she's got wheels on
I know. But that's the difference. If you can capture that difference, we can be aware of something, but not thinking about it. There's a difference between the two. Okay, let's look at mindful listening on the next page. This exercise is designed to open your ears to sound in a non-judgmental way. And non-judgmental is another way of thinking about being aware of something without thinking about it. As soon as we think about it, we're judging it. The air is too hot. It's too crowded in here. This person didn't show up. As soon as we start judging the moment, making comparisons, doing what we're doing, now we're back into calculation mode. That's why Jesus is so strong on non-judgment. Not just non-condemnation, but non-calculation. Non-calculating the moment, thinking about all these things. So this is designed to open your ears to sound in a non-judgmental way. So much of what we see and hear on a daily basis is influenced by our past experiences. But when we listen mindfully, we achieve a neutral, present awareness that lets us hear sound without preconception. Select a piece of music you've never heard before. You may have something in your own collection that you've never listened to, or you might choose to turn the radio dial until something catches your ear. Close your eyes, put on your headphones. Try not to get drawn into judging the music by its genre, title, or artist name before it's begun playing. Instead, ignore any labels and neutrally allow yourself to get lost in the journey of sound for the duration of the song. Allow yourself to explore every aspect of the track. Even if the music isn't to your liking at first, let go of your dislike and give your awareness full permission to climb inside the track and dance among the sound waves. The idea is just to listen, to become fully entwined with the composition without preconception or judgment of the genre, artist, lyrics, or instrumentation. Okay? So think about the kind of music you like and the kind of music you don't like, and then try to suspend all of that and just listen to a track and see what happens. I don't think I've made any secret of the fact that I am not particularly a country music fan. Okay, and that's not my genre. Marion and I got invited to go see Keith Urban. It is Keith Urban, isn't it? Mm-hmm. I'm thinking of Carl Urban. He's the other guy. Keith Urban. So I'm going because we were invited and because Marion really likes country music and all that, but I'm not really anticipating anything. But I go there, and there were actually 2 acts before him that were much more country than he turned out to be. Because he's kind of country rock, he's kind of a mix, I found out, because I didn't know anything about the guy. But these 2 first acts, they were really country, but it was great. I mean, anything is better live anyway, I think, for the most sake. But the energy and the crowd, the enthusiasm of the crowd, and they all knew these guys, and I didn't know them from Adam, but watching them and watching them play and listening to the tightness of the band and everything that's going on, it was just like, this is really great. And then Urban gets up there, and I had no idea who this guy was, but he can play guitar. Oh my gosh. I'm watching him and listening to play guitar, how he can sing on top of soloing, because he was like this lead guitarist plus the lead singer plus the writer. And he was just putting on this great show, and I was totally transfixed. And then there was this great moment where he got on, his guitar was wireless, and he comes out into the audience, singing on a headset mic and with his guitar. And they had a platform set up about halfway up. This was in Irvine Meadows when there still wasn't Irvine Meadows. And he gets on top, and he's standing on this platform that was just built over the seats, not 15 feet from where we were sitting, right? And he plays a whole nother song or 2 from that location with a spot on him. And I got to watch Marion jump up with a bunch of other groupies and stand around him all having fun. It was great. And then I kid you not, at the end of before he was going to go back to stage, he takes off his guitar, he pulls out a Sharpie, signs it, and just hands it just randomly to a girl that was standing in front of him. It's like, I wish I was a groupie then. I could have. But I'm telling you, it was just a great experience. Now, I still wouldn't be picking country music, to put in my library or anything, but I was able to completely just get involved in the moment without even thinking about it and enjoying the music tremendously. Can you do that? Can you train yourself to do that? Do it. Just pick something randomly, or pick a genre that you really would say you don't like. Maybe it's classical music, maybe it's country, maybe it's jazz, whatever it happens to be. But just pick something at random and give it the test. Can you just stop? Shut off all the stuff in your head that's telling you this, that, and the other thing. Shut off the memories that maybe this music is bringing to you. Because music brings emotional memories, like smells bring emotion back. They hit the part of the brain that connects with that, and so you're going to feel it much more deeply. And just listen to the music and see what happens. This is more training in letting go of all that stuff, all that baggage. All right? Mindful immersion. The intention of this exercise is to cultivate contentment in the moment and escape the persistent striving we find ourselves caught up in on a daily basis. Rather than anxiously wanting to finish an everyday routine task in order to get on with doing something else, take that regular routine and fully experience it like never before. For example, if you're cleaning your house, pay attention to every detail of the activity. Rather than treat this as a regular chore, create an entirely new experience by noticing every aspect of your actions. Feel and become the motion when sweeping the floor. Sense the muscles you use when scrubbing the dishes. Develop a more efficient way of wiping the windows clean. The idea is to get creative and discover new experiences within a familiar routine task. Instead of laboring through and constantly thinking about finishing the task, become aware of every step and fully immerse yourself in the progress. Take the activity beyond a routine by aligning yourself with it physically, mentally, and spiritually. Who knows? You might even enjoy cleaning for once. Is that possible? Oh. I don't know. There's a couple movies I've seen where someone is vacuuming or doing something, and this pounding soundtrack is going, and they're dancing through the routine and doing this whole thing, and it's kind of choreographed with the vacuum cleaner. That's one of them. Yes, absolutely. I forgot about that. Yeah, he did that so well. But it's kind of like that. Can you turn it into something like that? Can you really pay attention? You know, it also brings to mind wax on, wax off from the Karate Kid. You know, he gives him the task of waxing the cars, but he says when you do it, make sure you do it like this. It's wax on and it's wax off. And he was supposed to pay attention to that circular motion. He was supposed to pay attention to the muscles that he was using as he was going through those motions. Now, he didn't know why. He didn't know the connection point, and that was part of the point. If he had told him what he was doing, then he would have messed it all up, because he would have brought to mind everything he thought he knew about karate and what he thought he knew about defensive and offensive moves. And he would have messed up the pure motion that he was being taught as he just waxed the car, you know, and then sanded the floor and painted the fence. Do it like this. Specific ways of doing it, specific motions and muscles that would be involved. You know, when you're doing whatever it is you're doing, think about that. You know, feel the muscles that you're using and move through it. Thich Nhat Hanh, who is a Buddhist contemplative and a monk, he has a great line. He says, you know, when you wash the dishes, really wash the dishes. You know, wash the dishes. Be there. Feel the viscosity of the water and the soap, and feel and just really be there. There's a great story of him hosting a Westerner for dinner, and you know, when they get to the end of the meal, you know, he starts to pick up the dishes and take them into the kitchen, and the Westerner says, "Oh, let me help you." And he says, "No, no, no." He says, "I can do this." "No, no, I really want to help." He says, "No, you wouldn't do it right." He says, "I think I know how to wash dishes." And he says, "No, you would be washing the dishes just to get them done so you can have dessert. When you wash the dishes, you need to really wash the dishes." You know? In other words, don't be doing your task so you can get done with it to get to the next thing, to get to dessert. You know? Don't make it a means to another end. Let it be the end in itself. The moment of washing the dishes or vacuuming the floor or doing whatever routine tasks you have is just as much a part of your life, a moment of your life, as anything else that you would say is more significant than that. And to continue to wish those moments away or to speed through them is going to be just, you know, speed reading through most of your life. I just heard a statistic that here in I think it's in Orange County or in California, we spend about 6 months of our life sitting in front of red lights. In a lifetime, 6 months of our life is spent just sitting in front of red lights. Think about that for a second. What are you doing when you're sitting in front of a red light? Impatiently, angrily, cursing the fact that the light is so long? That's 6 months of your life. You know? Is there a better way that we can spend that particular time and task? This is what we're talking about here, you know. And it may sound like I've got it all together and I do this really well. No. But at least if we know what the goal is, the purpose is, then we have a chance of maybe spending more moments in a good spot like that. All right? So think of a chore you do and see if you can reorient it. Mindful appreciation. In this last exercise, all you have to do is notice 5 things in your day that usually go unappreciated. These things can be objects or people. It's up to you. Use a notepad to check off 5 by the end of the day. The point of this exercise is to simply give thanks and appreciate the seemingly insignificant things in life, the things that support our existence, but rarely get a second thought amidst our desire for bigger and better things. Remember that show? Is that Mike, somebody or other? It was Dirty Jobs. You know, the dirty jobs that make civilized life possible for the rest of us, or something like that. Mike Rowe, yeah. And he'd go in and he'd go in and clean sewers or pigsties or something. All the invisible jobs that are the support jobs that keep our civilized life going. You know, it's kind of like that. You know, can you start to give some awareness to those things that support, that are part of your life in that way? For example, electricity powers your kettle. The postman delivers your mail. Your clothes provide you warmth. Your nose lets you smell the flowers in the park. Your ears let you hear the birds in the tree by the bus stop. But do you know how these things or processes came to exist, or how they really work? Have you ever properly acknowledged how these things benefit your life and the lives of others? Have you ever thought about what life might be like without these things? Have you ever stopped to notice their finer, more intricate details? Have you ever sat down and thought about the relationships between these things and how together they play an interconnected role in the functioning of the earth? Ooh, that's big. Once you have identified your 5 things, make it your duty to find out everything you can about their creation and purpose to truly appreciate the way in which they support your life. When you run across a word that's unfamiliar to you, do you take the time to look it up?
Yes.
Anybody? You do?
Yep.
Couple of you? Yeah? Yeah, that's great. Isn't there like a curiosity? What the heck? Did they really use that word right? Come on. I mean, just think, But think about that. Develop some curiosity about these things. There's another one of those shows on that was How Things Work. And it was fascinating to me to see, they'd go in and say, how do they can tuna or something? And they'd go into the factory and they'd show you from, fish coming in one end to little cans coming out the other side. What's the process? I remember when we were up in Oregon, we went to the Tillamook cheese factory. That was so cool. I mean, huge blocks of yellow cheese. And you know how they cut it? It's wires. Coming down a conveyor belt, these things hit wires, kind of like those laser grids you sometimes see in movies that dice people up. These come down and they'd hit those wires, and the wires went through the cheese just like butter. And they'd come out in these perfectly little cubes, and then they'd go into packaging, and you're behind glass, but you're watching the floor, everybody with their hairnets on and everything. But it was really cool. I mean, how does that happen? How does that work? When the tortillas come in that nice pack and you rip the thing off, and how does that... Have you ever thought about the fact that nobody knows how electricity works? Nobody knows. There's theories about it, but nobody really knows what's happening. We know how to produce it. We know how to transmit it. Somebody figured out that if you cut a magnetic field with a conductive, material, it generates electricity. That's all a turbine is. It's just wires wrapped around a magnet, and when you turn this thing, it generates electricity. How's that work? Just a wire breaking through a magnetic field generates electricity? That's what a turbine is. You just got to turn the turbine. How do you turn the turbine? Well, you can stick it in front of a waterfall or a river. You can turn it that way. It's hydroelectric power. You can stick it on a propeller and let the wind turn it. That's wind, power. Or you can burn coal, or you can burn wood, or you can attach it to a mule. I mean, you just got to turn the thing. Or you can sit on a bike and you can turn it, and that's what powers the little display there. But that's all it is. But we don't really know what's going on. What's really happening when that wire breaks through the magnetic field? Oh, one electron hits another electron, blah, blah, blah. Nobody really knows. But we know how to use it. But it's pretty cool, right? If you stop and think about it. And with the internet at your fingertips, you could look up anything. You never know if it's true or not, but you can look it all up, And then you can compare all the different things that you find out and see what you decide is true. But take the time and think about it. What's really going on in this technological age of ours? It's pretty amazing, some of the things that are going on. And it's not all for the better. We've gone down that discussion. We don't have to repeat that one. But think about it. Investigate it. And what it's going to do is going to make you more mindfully aware. The point of every one of these exercises is to help us, first of all, to cut out all the distractions, to come right into a moment thinking only about the thing that is right in front of us, not all the other distractions. To be aware of something without judging it, without putting it into a box and into a category, contrasting and comparing, just accepting it for what it is and letting it kind of flow through us. I mean, that's really what all these are about. If you could go through your day, the entire day, thinking only about the thing that you're actually doing, how do you think that would transform not only that day, but your life as a result? I mean, this to me is 90% of the spiritual journey right there. It's simple mindfulness, simple awareness, to really be here now. And we're just talking about things now. Now, what about people? What if you were that present to the person that you're with? And if you think about the people that have left the biggest impressions on your life, I guarantee one of the main characteristics of that person is that they heard you. You always had the sense that when you spoke, they were listening. Someone was looking back at you, and when you looked into their eyes, you weren't just seeing the back of their head. There was somebody looking back at you. They heard you, You knew they cared about you. When they responded to you, it was relevant. It was based on what you said, and it's just like, that's gold. If that kind of person has that kind of impact on you, and how many people in your life are really that present? I mean, can you count them on one hand? Two maybe? I mean, it's not going to be a lot of people. Be that person. Be that person for somebody else, because none of it comes back void. To be that present to somebody else means you're that present, and you can't help but get a twofer. So that's what these are all about. Paul's injunction to pray continuously is really this. It's not thinking a prayer. It is living mindfully with the awareness that your higher power, the God of your understanding, is at the center of all things at all times. You don't have to go find sacred space. All space is sacred when you bring your presence to meet presence, right? Okay, questions? Anything?
That last one there made me think of a movie I just watched called The Secret Life of Water. And
I've heard that title, but I've never seen it. Is it good?
brilliant.
Okay.
They talk about all the unique characteristics of water as a special liquid that has all of these properties that basically allow life to exist. Like, it's the only liquid in its solid form that's less dense than it in its liquid form, which allows it to float, because if it didn't, it would kill the plant life at the bottom of the ocean, and so on and so on and so on. And they were actually talking about water as a spiritual antenna that allows us to have kind of like an extrasensory communication kind of thing that goes on. And I think we talked about this in here before. One of the guys they had in this movie did a experiment where he wrote words on a piece of paper and put them under jars of water, and then he flash froze the water and looked at the types of crystals that they formed under a microscope. And words like love and compassion and gratitude had like these beautifully formed, perfect crystals. And words like anger and hate and so on, the crystals were all jaggedly formed. So he was postulating that since the human body is made up of 90% water, like what kind of words are we saying to ourselves? How does that physically affect the body? How the type of music we listen to, like how does that affect us physically by having this energy transferred into water? And he actually did the same experiment with different types of music, like Mozart's, and then...
Was country all jagged and horrible?
I don't remember if he did.
Did you see the part, William, where they poured water on a polypropylene speaker and played music through it?
No,
And the real chaotic music, it was just random,
Oh, yeah,
going crazy. But he played beautiful music and he created these beautiful patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing about water is unique that supports life is water freezes from the top down instead of like all liquids that freeze from the bottom up. Because if it didn't, no life would last in the ocean.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Where the oceans freeze over at the polar
Yeah.
surface.
And it was just fascinating
Lakes
like,
and
to think
rivers, too.
about how water is subjected to gravity, but it defies the laws of gravity when it goes up into a plant. And there is nothing that can explain what that suction would look like that is so powerful that it defies the laws of gravity.
The plant's just sucking through the straw. Come on.
Plant is just
But it's what they were saying is like if you think of a small little sapling, the amount of energy it would take to suck the water up, that plant doesn't have that energy. But the water changes its crystal formations or something that allows it to rise up a little bit more.
See, this
Maybe
is
that's our
sort
next
of
movie night.
yeah. This is sort of the point, though, isn't it? I mean, all this stuff about water, and we just turn a tap and we fill a cup, and we don't really think about what's going on. But there's so much there, and because he's seen that movie, and now because we've all heard about it, we're going to approach water for the next 24 hours or so at least, a little differently. But then we're going to just fall back into our complacency, and we won't think about it anymore. And so these mindfulness exercises and a regular practice of contemplative life is going to keep bringing that wonder back to us, and that's the whole point. To keep bringing it back, to be re-energized, to be refilled with this eternal aliveness that we were talking about on Sunday. That's life that is eternal is life that is always alive, always new, always fresh, always with the ability to surprise us. That's the way we want to live. That's the life of abundance that Jesus is talking about. And that's what we can have when we live in kingdom, when we allow ourselves to go back to the child, the beginner mind. It's all tied in with that stuff. Let's take a look at why are mindfulness skills important? Because, okay, we've talked about some of the benefits of mindfulness, but is it really worth the energy and the effort that that's going to entail? And that was the brand new sheet, the one that you should have gotten right here. If you didn't get one yet, more, grab that one right at the end.
Which one is it?
That one.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So what I did was I went through this book. This is the Dialectical Behavioral Therapy Skills Workbook, and I took some excerpts, just some highlight exercises that they have, and then this little intro bit to just kind of, now let's talk about mindfulness from more of a clinical viewpoint, and then they'll give us some skills that are maybe a little bit more detailed. So why are mindfulness skills important? Now that you have a better idea of what mindfulness is and isn't, it's probably easy to see why this skill is so important. But for the purposes of this workbook, let's be very clear about why you need to learn mindfulness skills. There are 3 reasons. 1, mindfulness skills will help you focus on one thing at a time in the present moment, and by doing this you can better control and soothe your overwhelming emotions. See, this is where it starts to get down to brass tacks. This is where the rubber hits the road, right? Yeah, it's all great to be wondering at water, but what's the purpose of this? Because we as human beings are going through life overwhelmed by emotions. We're bouncing from trigger to trigger. We're unable to be able to process through a triggered moment and make decisions that are anything but destructive and dysfunctional, and further just keeping us in that negative cycle. So by being able to break through, I've often said that we've got 2 tools at our disposal to break through ingrained behavior patterns and thought patterns, and that's awareness and opposite action. I mean, that's really it when it comes right down to it. To continue to choose opposite to what the trigger or the emotion is gearing you toward is to break down that particular habit over time. That's not going to happen once or twice, but over time it'll break down. But you can't do that in real time unless you're actually aware that you have a choice. And so awareness and opposite action. Mindfulness, contemplative prayer, meditation is the art and science of becoming aware. And then you can open up, as Viktor Frankl says, the space between stimulus and response, where all growth becomes possible, all right? So that's what we're doing. The awareness opens up the space. It's not just a knee-jerk reaction. You aren't just mindlessly, being stimulated to do the same old thing. You're actually opening up a space. And in that space is all the room you need to do something different. And it's the doing of something different over time that actually rewires the brain, rewires the synapses. So you're creating a new normal for yourself. I mean, it's that simple and that difficult at the same time. 2, mindfulness will help you learn to identify and separate judgmental thoughts from your experiences. Okay? You see what he's saying? We think the judgment that we are laying on something is reality. It becomes our experience, right? But it doesn't have to be. It's just what's going on in our head. It may or may not have anything to do with what's really going on in the moment. These judgmental thoughts often fuel your overwhelming emotions. So we go into a situation already loaded for bear. We go into a situation already fired. Like I was going into that concert thinking, I'm not going to like this. It's country music. I'm doing this for my wife. I'm going to endure 3 hours of this, and then I'm going to get to go home. But I was able to suspend that and just get wrapped up in it. I wasn't thinking I was trying to do that. I'm not going to say I was that noble. I wasn't. I did show up for my wife. That was noble. But I just got wrapped up into it. You don't have to overthink it. It's the willingness to show up and let what happens happens. But this mindfulness is going to allow you to start to separate. You'll actually get the awareness of, this is just my head talking to me. This has nothing to do with what's going on here. You can actually make that distinction, and then you can choose appropriately. Not the negative thought in your head driving you to the same old thing that always has the same result, but now you can choose something different. 3, mindfulness will help you develop a skill that's very important in dialectical behavior therapy called wise mind. Wise mind is the ability to make healthy decisions about your life based on both your rational thoughts and your emotions. For example, you probably notice that it's often difficult or impossible to make good decisions when your emotions are intense, out of control, or contradict what's rational. Similarly, it's often difficult to make informed decisions when your thoughts are intense, irrational, or contradict how you feel. Wise mind is a decision-making process that balances the reasoning of your thoughts with the needs of your emotion. That's cool. The reasoning of your thoughts with the needs of your emotions. And it is a skill that will be discussed further in Chapter 4, but not by us. Is that kind of squaring with a lot of the stuff that you're doing? Yeah. In your practice? That's cool. Okay. Here's an exercise. Focus on a single minute. This is the first exercise that will help you focus more fully on the present moment. It's simple to do, but often it has an amazing effect. Its purpose is to help you become more mindful of your own sense of time. For this exercise, you'll need a watch with a second hand, or preferably a stopwatch. Many people feel that time goes by very quickly. As a result, they're always in a rush to do things, and they're always thinking about the next thing they have to do or the next thing that could go wrong. Unfortunately, this just makes them more unmindful of what they're doing in the present moment. Other people feel that time goes by very slowly. As a result, they feel like they have more time than they actually do, and they frequently find themselves running late. I resemble that one. This simple exercise, I heard Shirley saying about Pat Boone that he always thinks he has more time. He always has one more thing that he can squeeze in before he needs to leave. I found myself doing the same thing. Okay, I got 20 minutes. I can do this one thing. And then, of course, 10 minutes have gone by before I look up again. So I'm usually the second part. This simple exercise will help you become more mindful of how quickly or slowly time actually does go by. Instructions. To begin this exercise, find a comfortable place to sit in a room where you won't be disturbed for a few minutes and turn off any distracting sounds. Begin timing yourself with your watch or stopwatch. Then, without counting the seconds or looking at the watch, simply sit wherever you are. When you think that 1 minute has passed, check the watch again or stop the timer. Note how much time really has passed. And then there's another 2 or 3 paragraphs of instructions in the book itself that, if you're really into it, you can go to. But they say keep doing it, keep practicing until your sense of time gets closer and closer to the actual elapsing of time, so that you're really accurately describing that. Okay, I didn't print these out, but if you're sitting next to someone who has the full, Maura, maybe you can grab the last one here. This is all 7 pages that I put in the PDF in the group, all right? But we'll just read through it if you're not. Oh, there's a couple of them. Is anyone not close to one?
I don't have one.
Okay, why don't you grab one? Give one to Billiam. Okay. And then hopefully you can just look over each other's shoulders, and we're just going to read through. And this is just a sampling of some of the things that came from the workbook. This exercise is focus on a single object. Focusing on a single object is a second mindfulness skill that will help you concentrate more fully on the present moment. Remember, one of the biggest traps of being unmindful is that your attention wanders from one thing to the next, or from one thought to the next, and as a result, you often get lost, distracted, and frustrated. Is that ringing any bells there, Scotty?
Yeah, I was distracted.
Yeah, I know. This exercise will help you focus your attention on a single object. The purpose of this exercise is to help you train your mental muscle. This means you will learn to maintain your focus on whatever it is you're observing. And with practice, you'll get better at focusing your attention, just like an athlete who exercises certain muscles to become stronger. During this exercise, you'll eventually become distracted by your thoughts, memories, or other sensations. That's okay. This happens to everyone who does this exercise.
Sorry about
He's way
that. Whatever
down.
you're reading,
He's
I
way
think
down
you're
the
like
page.
You're on through page 3.
It's on page
Yeah.
3.
Keep going until exercise, focus on a single object.
that's page 3.
Stay with us, buddy. You been there? I'm on paragraph
it was
2 now.
Bob's fault. He distracted.
Yeah, I'm sure. Okay, second paragraph. During this exercise, you will eventually become distracted by your thoughts, memories. Oh, I said that already. See, I'm distracted. Third paragraph. Pick a small object to focus on. Choose something that can rest on a table, is safe to touch, and is emotionally neutral. It can be anything, such as a pen, a flower, a watch, a ring, a cup, or something similar. Don't choose to focus on something that could hurt you or on a picture of someone you don't like. These will stir up too many emotions for you right now. Find a comfortable place to sit in a room where you won't be disturbed for a few minutes. Put the object on a table in front of you. Turn off any distracting sounds. If you have a stopwatch or an alarm clock, set the timer for 5 minutes. Do this exercise once or twice a day for 2 weeks, choosing a different object to focus on each time. You can photocopy the instructions if you forget about that part. Okay, instructions. Sit comfortably, take a few slow, deep breaths. Then, without touching the object, begin looking at it and exploring its different surfaces with your eyes. Take your time exploring what it looks like. Then try to imagine the different qualities that the object possesses. What does the surface of the object look like? Is it shiny or dull? Does it look smooth or rough? Does it look soft or hard? Does it have multiple colors or just one color? What else is unique about the way the object looks? Take your time observing the object. Now hold the object in your hand or reach out and touch the object. Begin noticing the different ways it feels. And then they had another laundry list of things to do as you're touching the objects. Finally, continue exploring the object with both your sight and your sense of touch. Continue to breathe comfortably. When your attention begins to wander, return your focus to the object. Keep on exploring the object until your alarm goes off or until you have fully explored all the qualities of the object. Okay? So this may be something, Scotty, we're talking about, could be training wheels on a bike for you to maybe hone the skills before you're inside of nothing, trying to, this might be a way to work up to that.
I mean, there was a season for months and months and months where I did an hour every morning, but it's like my brain would just shut off. I'd do the hour, but man, talk about returning to the sacred.
So it's harder now than it was before?
There's just no peace, joy, or fun or reward in it. It seems like I don't understand what I'm doing it for, because I don't ever achieve any of these moments. It's all work for me.
Okay, maybe try some of these that are more hands-on and focused, and see if that can lead you into more productive time. Does anyone else feel that way about centering prayer or meditation? That it's just kind of all work and no play?
Reassuring.
Yeah.
Well, wait, what are you're saying you're not getting the pain out, what are you
I'm
expecting
saying
to
that
get? Like,
whether I've tried for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, half hour, or an hour, which I did for many months, I spend 90% of that time refocusing my thought, quieting my mind, giving myself instructions, focusing on the breath. And when I'm done, I don't understand the point of what I just did. I don't feel refreshed or calmer. There seems to be no purpose in it for me, other than to say I did the exercise.
Is there always a right-away result, though? I don't know if there really is.
Is there always, say it again?
A right-away result? A result right away? It seems like it's...
He's thinking
If
after
there
3
is, there
months.
isn't a right away or a later in the day result for me.
Scott, I know I had to let go of like attaching a goal
I remember you talked about
to that
out in the garden.
experience.
You
It
talked
helped me
about
a lot. I think Dave mentioned that to me at one point. It's like, oh, that was a huge relief.
Yeah.
But I think the point was to notice when your thoughts had strayed, and then being able to be gentle with yourself and pulling them back. And the process was what was helpful, because the experience I've had is like when I left that exercise and moved into my day, I could be more attentive to people that were crossing my path, When I was out exercising, I don't wear headphones. I don't usually listen to anything. Sometimes I do, but not very often. And I'll take in everything that I see around me, including the people that I pass. You know, and look at them in a new way, and be attentive to those moments. And that for me has been very rewarding.
And maybe when I go for my walks, maybe that is when because I do those things. I literally will even say in my mind, and sometimes out loud, to plants even, that I appreciate them, the beauty they bring in my life. And I do this throughout an hour walk. But when I'm sitting at home in a chair, no distractions, quiet in a room, it's arduous to get through an hour.
That might be more than you need, though, I would think. An hour seems like.
20 to 30 minutes is a target time, you know, but that may seem like an hour to you.
I know that when I first started, and I still wrestle with this some, is that it was so very frustrating to me. I felt like, you know, I was making the joke at the time of it's like whack-a-mole for me, you know. It's like my thoughts are coming up and I was working so hard to like, dang it, stop it, you know, to
Yeah,
my
that's
thoughts.
kind of what happens to me. I
And-
can't shut off my brain.
And it became this kind of huge judgmental focus of what a failure I was. You know, it was like everything that popped up, there was judgmental thinking about, and I was beating myself, trying to almost like perform it into if I could just keep it quiet for a little, and yet I couldn't seem to do it. And it was really frustrating. I just thought there was something wrong with my head that, you know, it was really frustrating. But more now, as I've been doing it, and I did start off at that 5 minutes and, you know, just kind of stay at a 20-minute thing. And still, I'm bouncing all over the place, you know. But I think what's helped me more now is even though, you know, there's constant, you know, my mind wandering off, is kind of somewhere in there, some of the judgment detached. And there was a book, I don't even remember where I heard this from, but it was like, your brain's doing what it is wired to do. It's thinking, oh, okay, you're just doing your job, and that's okay. And somehow I started letting go more of the judgment. So there's a gentler,
Yes.
oh, okay, yeah, you're there, that's fine. I can just come back and say the sacred word, and we're just starting over. But not like, I need to start over, you know. That,
Don't look at it as
you
failure.
know, and maybe doing more of just trying to force it and doing an hour isn't helping at all. And I can remember Bill talking about that. He was talking about he would go hiking. What was it? And that because it didn't make sense to him what he was trying to do, but that made more sense. So you know, Dave's talked about some people doing a walking meditation. Of maybe that sitting quietly in the chair isn't
Your cup of tea.
your
Yeah.
goal if you're being hard on yourself. And
I knew
you
that
can't-
chair was evil
like,
from the beginning.
yeah, it's a chair.
He's judging the chair.
Well, the cool thing about what Bill said is he started taking these hikes, and then he realized that he was sitting in front of a cactus, and he made cactus his sacred word. And that worked for him because somehow it was connected to the environment and the place he was rather than something completely abstract but holy, quote unquote. You know?
Yeah, I enjoy what I call my walking meditations.
So
It's
maybe
quiet
that-
and trying to receive from the environment around me.
My thought, my thinking about what your experience is you're still trying to bring a rational process to something that is, by definition, non-rational. And because of that, you've got this mismatch. You have an expectation of something rational happening or an outcome the way Polly was talking about it. And that's what we're trying to let go of. What Sharon and Judy are talking about is the slow cultivation of a different way of processing information throughout your life. But it's going to happen kind of by osmosis. It's not going to be something that you actually, you know, just grab onto. as you keep showing up to this, you'll find, like Sharon said beautifully, there's just going to be less judgment about your failure to be able to do this thing. That's progress in itself. Maybe you're still having just as much trouble stepping away from your thoughts, but you're not thinking so negatively about it, or blaming yourself, or having a negative judgment about it. You just realize, oh yeah, this is part of the process. But as you break through that threshold, the next one and the next one, you'll realize, yes, you actually can do this. But as William and some of the other ones are saying, back up a bit. Start with what you can already do. If focusing on an object like this exercise was, or taking your walking meditation, but don't thank the plant verbally. See if you can just be aware that the plant exists. You can feel the gratitude or whatever you feel, the sense of connection, but try to avoid forming the words in your head, and see if you can go through the experience that way. And then see if that can translate to 10 or 15 minutes of actual centering prayer. Maybe centering prayer is just not for you. That's okay. If you can still connect in other ways.
We've talked about this in the Bible study and other places, like when you're contemplating the presence of God, it seems like you're able to stay connected to that. You're just having difficulty not thinking while you're meditating.
Absolutely.
You know, so
You need a lot more bananas for the monkey brain.
yeah.
And there's going to be times of your life, like right now, I'm having a real hard time. And because there's so much stuff firing, I'm just having, it was a few years ago, it was a lot easier. But then I stopped doing it for a while because I was just really focused on the Brother Lawrence School, where I was just going to be mindful all the time. And then as things got more and more chaotic, it's like, okay, I need to put this back in. And I'm having a hard time getting back into it, you know. But kind of like Sharon, it's like I'm not pissed at myself, or I'm not just, serenity now. It's just I just recognize it, wow, this is really crazy. It's just not that easy anymore.
Today was probably the best meditation. Something happened today that was very different. And for the last couple of weeks, it's been, you can't, it's like a field of rabbit holes, and I'm going in every single one, and the thoughts are just, can't stop. Today was something very different, and I don't say a sacred word, I say a sacred sentence. I say, Jesus, I belong to you. And I told myself this morning to slow down, don't, Jesus, I belong to you, Jesus, I belong, slow it down, and I all of a sudden, I envisioned myself, I can only call it the throne room, where I came into the presence of Jesus, and I hugged him with a full body hug, like guys hug like with their butts out, Well, man, this was.
He had one leg
we
wrapped
embraced.
around.
Yeah, we just embraced, and I was just loving on him like. And
cool.
man, the beeper went off. I have a timer set for 20 minutes, and that went off, and it's like, wow, tears had started to come down my cheeks. And I've never cried, at that time before. Not that I'm not experienced, but it was a powerful, emotional experience. Now, there was a lot of thought. I wasn't thinking about being in the presence of God. It was all pictured in my mind. Really wasn't talking to him or to myself, but just.
So here's the next pitfall to be aware of, not only, especially for you, but for all of us listening to this. You're going to have the tendency to want to judge every other meditative experience by the peak experience you had there, and that will be the kiss of death. To let every experience be what it is. You had a huge emotional experience connected to a spiritual experience, but they're not the same thing. Emotions are physical. The spiritual is not by definition. But when we have an emotional experience that's tied to a spiritual encounter, we conflate the two, and we think, oh, that's the way it's supposed to be. I finally achieved it, and then the next time it's not. Well, something's wrong. No, nothing's wrong. Sometimes you will have that reaction, and sometimes you won't. All we're supposed to do is keep showing up. Just keep showing up without any expectation. And sometimes you'll have amazing experiences like this.
There was no way I wanted to turn that off. Like,
Yeah.
there's no way I was gonna say, okay, monkey mind, stop, you know, like, don't go down that rabbit hole. This was too.
Yeah.
Cleansing almost.
Mm-hmm. Now we're already past time, so it's obvious we're not going to get through this stuff. But what I would suggest, there's a different quality to these mindfulness exercises than the ones that we read before. You know, they are more specific, they're more tactile, and remember, they're geared for people with mental illness, and so they're gonna have a little bit more teeth and traction to them. Read through them, and you know, if you didn't get the full packet, then go in the group and download the PDF file and take a look and just read through, especially this radical acceptance, which really is just forgiveness. You know, it's a way of looking at forgiveness from a different perspective. And the radical acceptance coping statements and the radical acceptance exercise and safe place visualization. It's all really good stuff. And if you really want to get into it, or if you think that you need to, you know, there's a link to the book. Just to kind of finish up here, none of this is going to work if it isn't a regular practice. We've talked about this before. There's 5 things that we all need in order to be able to find our purpose as human beings, and that's community, but community with accountability, which is kind of like community on steroids. You're not just showing up to a group of people. You're present enough to them, you're allowing them into your life, you're spending enough time connecting with them that you actually can be mutual accountability partners. It's having a structure, you know, one that's imposed to you and one that you create from the inside out. So there'll be a combination of outside in structure that's imposed from the community, and then an inside out structure that you are disciplined to, which is the 4th one, when nobody else is looking. So in a faith community like The Effect, there is a certain structure here weekly. You guys are being disciplined to it. But if you aren't simultaneously building a house within that house, you know, another structure inside that is just for you, and it's what you do when nobody else is looking. If you're not building that at the same time, then this isn't going to have the effect that you would hope it would have. The last piece, of course, is service, a way to be able to give back. But service can be very organic. It's not that you have to go out and find a mission field to volunteer to. It's just being present enough and compassionate and connected enough to just provide what is needed for whoever's in your path at the moment. So if you don't have one, create, and these grids here are for the purpose of creating a repeatable and regular practice of quiet time, devotion, centering prayer, meditation, whatever it is you can do. And you have to be able to set your bedtime. If you're going to get up a little earlier, you have to set your bedtime and set your wake time, and then a regular place where you can have this carved out time to do this. And it can be a combination of a lot of things, not just centering prayer or meditation, but it can be mindful reading, devotional reading. It can be just sitting with a cup of coffee. It can be taking a walk the way Scotty was describing. It can be a lot of things or a combination of things. But this is your routine, and you just get up every day and you do it. You don't think about it, it's just there. You get up, you do it, and you do it over time. And over time you'll find that this different way of processing information in your life and processing the moments of your life is going to be cultivated. And you won't necessarily recognize it as you're changing. Other people may recognize it in you first. You know, I remember when Frank and I went to Desert House of Prayer, and I sat down with one of the priests. I just booked a half an hour with him and sat down. And he recognized, he said, "You already practice centering prayer, don't you?" And I said, "Yeah, I've been doing it for years." He says, "Yeah, I can tell." He says, "There's just a calmness about you." Oh, I wasn't feeling particularly calm at the moment, you know. And so it kind of took me by surprise. I didn't think that would, but to someone, I suppose, who's trained in doing it himself, he takes one to know one kind of thing. But other people may start saying things about you before you really realize. They'll notice something different about you. The people closest to you are going to notice first, perhaps. And then there'll be a time where you realize something that would have triggered you 6 weeks or 6 months ago barely moved the needle, and then you realize you've changed. The change is going to take place in that sort of way. It's not going to be an outcome that you can just draw the Venn diagram to and go and get, because as soon as you do that, then you're going the wrong way. But if you need one of these, take one of these. They're also in the Retreating in Place PDF that's also posted at the group, so you can print out as many as you want, because they'll be changing over time. But think about how you can actually institute this in a regular fashion, you know. And don't set the bar so high that you're going to blow it within 24 hours and then, you know, just give up and just roll over and have a piece of cheesecake. So, you know, so set the bar where you can, but whatever you do set, just go for it and actually do it. And when you blow it, because you will, no big deal, just get up the next morning and start over. You know, it's that simple. But really see if you can put something in place that's regular and repeatable and just keep showing up. You know, don't worry about it, don't think about it, don't expect anything, just show up. But stuff will happen. Okay? All right. We are done.